Everyone, and welcome to this week's episode. I have got a special guest for you today, and I want to tell you a little bit more about her. Kirsten Matthews is one of my clients, and I am so pleased to introduce her to you. This woman is a powerhouse. So let me tell you a little bit about her. Here's what she's got to say. If you've been raising a big feeling dog and life has been throwing changes your way, maybe it's a new job, maybe a new family member, or you've got a big move coming on, or you're just having a tough time. You're getting close to burnout, you're feeling really overwhelmed, then she gets it. Kay, the Canine Detective, is a certified dog trainer and coach who works with devoted dog mums to help their dogs feel safer, calmer, and more connected. Her daily her one-on-one daily training programs offer hands-on support to reduce stress, rebuild trust, and make the dog mom's life and the dog's life feel manageable again. Welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you so much for having me. I have been listening to the podcast for quite a while now, so it's kind of surreal to be on it myself as a guest.
And it's weird, right? Because then once we've had this conversation, it's going to get recorded and it'll get released. And like 4 years from now, you can go back and listen to it and go, "Oh my gosh, I have grown so much, and I've evolved even further." So it's kind of fun to have an asset that's a bit of a timestamp for where you're at in time.
Yeah, it's kind
So
of like a journal entry.
yeah, exactly. So let's talk about this thing. Life coach for dog moms. Like it's a really unusual niche. And I don't know that there's anybody else that's doing this kind of thing. What do you think?
I haven't found anyone yet, but I am not so self-centered to think that I am the first and only one to have ever thought of such a thing because there are so many amazing coaches and so many amazing trainers out there. Um, but when I was really taking a hard look at what do I want my practice to be like, because I've been in the dog world for a while, my progression to dog trainer from being, a dog walker, managing a boarding facility, et cetera, et cetera. And after working with so many clients, I realized there needs to be a lot more support for certain clients on the human end of the leash as well. And I have worked with life coaches on and off for a number of years now, and I found myself kind of falling into such a practice. So it's nice to make that intentional shift at this point.
I like it. And so what is there a moment that inspired you to make this transition? Like you said, you've been in the dog industry. I hate to call it an industry, but it is an industry. You've
Mhm.
been in that dog profession for years. What inspired you to make this little transition? Is there a moment in time that something happened, or how did it happen?
I've gone through a couple of iterations. I think at the beginning of my career with dogs was really inspired by my first dog, who was a rescue. And there's so much I discovered throughout that process where looking back, I wish I had had someone like me to be able to point out some of the things that I could have been doing differently, or just so I could have some answers. Because it's one of those things where you have a dog and maybe they have some health challenges. So you have your vet and you have your dog trainer, and maybe you have your dog groomer, and you have this, that, and the other thing. And what happens is people get very dizzy going from one source to the other because there's not really anything looking at their dog's whole life, and especially in conjunction with the human. And that's what I needed. I needed someone to tell me that, hey, maybe you should go see, this specialist because maybe your dog has OCD, or like maybe you should go talk to this vet about this thing. And that was just a resource I didn't have at the time. So I think really I've spent my career just trying to be the resource I wish that I had had when I got my first dog.
Yeah, I really like that. And, these days, life is stressful. And so we might have had more resilience to deal with it when there wasn't such a fast moving pace, there wasn't so many demands on our time. But then, as soon as the dog owner, as soon as our emotional bandwidth gets smaller, it spills over into everything in your life, right? And so to be able to have a healthier relationship with your dog, which is often, like it's one of those places where you just have that unconditional love, and it's a much more smoother relationship than many relationships, than relationships with peers at work or bosses or partners, right? You want that to be home. And so it's really important to make that the best home that you can be. Tell me something here. There is dog training, which
Mhm.
I understand, kind of. And then there's coaching, which I do understand. How do you blend them together? How do you make that integration happen?
Yeah, absolutely. And so to explain this, I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent first, just so listeners can understand. Within even dog training, there's multiple segments, but let's say there's two broad ones. There's one that is teaching your dog skills or cues, what one would think of like traditionally as commands, like obedience, like sit down and stand. And then there's behavior modification. And behavior modification is things like your dog is really scared of other dogs. And there's the birthplace of reactivity and different things like that. And so those things need to work together, but they're not the same thing. So when you go to look at hiring somebody to help you with your dog, people can be skilled in a variety of different ways. And so you really have to look at like what their expertise is. So that's one section. Then if we look at coaching, this is a really interesting kind of uh, niche area of the industry I found myself in because I try to take a look at things from a coaching perspective for both the human and the dog. And so, what this looks like for the case of a dog mom, it's giving her the skills, both emotionally with respect to time management, understanding what her responsibilities and skill sets she needs to have for her end of the leash to be able to work together with her dog. And then also things from a coaching perspective for the dog. And you might think, why would one need life coaching for a dog, right? They're a dog. Um, but back to what I said at the beginning, their dog's life is not confined to the moments of time where you're just walking them or you're asking them to do a sit. They are a sentient being. They have their own way that they experience life. And so what I found with over the course of working with a lot of dog training clients, particularly those who have what I like to call big feeling dogs, and a lot of those come from the rescue world is they would make some great progress with teaching their dog certain skills like crate training, being able to come with call, things like that. But then they'd say like, "Hey, why does my dog have so much energy? Why are they still tearing things up in the house?" Different things like that. And some of that was because they didn't have the right kind of energy outlets, their breed specific needs weren't being met, different things like this. And so when we try to solve a problem in isolation, frequently other things kind of pop up. So my job is kind of to look at the whole picture. That was a very long-winded way. I don't know if I fully answered.
Yeah, I think you did. And it's almost similar to people who do coaching of relationships. Maybe it's
Yeah.
team coaching, right? Because each individual has their own needs and their own emotions and their own desires and goals. And then you've got, even if it's two or three people, you've got two or three individuals, but then you've also got the relationship that is created as another individual, right? So it's that you're taking multiple variables or multiple threads and helping each thread and then helping the thread together as well. So,
And sorry, I just want to add on to
yeah,
that point
yeah,
as well. A couple different things. One, a lot of people view their dogs as their family, which they totally are. They live in the household, they're a member of the household, which means also that that dog has a different relationship with person one versus person two. So, yes, do I have some clients that are single and live on their own and it's just them, the dog? Absolutely. But there's also a lot of clients that have partners or have children or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not as simple as when you start adding more people into it, you also need to look at how does the dog fit in with everybody and how do they feel about the dog. And so
Mm.
as you say, back with the relationship coaching, I'm sure all of us have met someone who, one spouse hated their relationship coach because they always took the side of the other. So that's also the balance that I really try to meet is it's not helpful if I'm only thinking of the interest of the dog because the human is just as equal of a member of that relationship, and they're just as much so, if not more so, of my client than the dog is.
It sounds like there's a big balancing act.
Oh, yeah.
When is right? Like when is the humans need more important and need to be addressed? When is it the dogs need? When is it time to sort of step back into each corner and kind of reassess? I'm not saying a dog can reassess, but
I
there's a
get the
thing.
idea. Yeah.
But there's a thing there about like, okay, just take a time out, everybody take a breath and figure this out. How do you work with your clients? Like what's the approach that you take? Because this sounds like it can be quite complex.
Uh, are we talking about like the techniques that I use or more just how is this structured?
Yeah, how's it structured?
Yeah, so I employ something called the daily method, which was and the open-minded approach, which was coined by my mentor, coworker, friend, Sailor Jerry from Tulsa Pack Athletics. And basically, this is the principle that, every day we're training with our dogs, with our clients. So I have private channels with each of my clients, and every single day I'm either giving them things to do, reviewing homework submissions that they've done. Either they've sent me videos or they have questions. So it's like kind of having a trainer in your pocket. And why that is important. And people might say, well, that seems kind of redundant. Like, why are you doing it every day? How helpful can it be for this to be done asynchronously or online? But if you look at habit building, how much better are you getting at something if you're doing some portion of it every day versus if you're only doing it once a week? And that's what I was finding when I was working with clients in person once a week. It's like, how to make sure that you're making the right kinds of progress and feeling supported in between those sessions. So that's why I switched to doing that daily method. And then I also do the once a week where we have the coaching call. And why I think that that's important is for some clients, especially those from the coaching perspective, that connection is really important. And something that's not really talked about is how isolating it can be as a dog mom, dog parent, dog guardian when you have a really big feeling dog, you can't leave them alone in your house. Your social circle has really shrunk because your dog hates other people. It can feel really isolating, especially when no one around you gets it. And maybe if people want to support you, if your dog doesn't like other people, that in of itself is a dynamic. So yeah, it has been really interesting kind of designing what I believe to be the best possible way to make sure that the training goals are being met while making sure that the dog guardian is getting that coaching support that they want. And what is coaching support? Coaching support in this context looks at things like, say their dog is reactive. What are your dog's tells? Can you read your dog? Do you understand your dog? So some of that's looking at basic canine body language. Some of that is figuring out what things are your dog's triggers. What things are causing your dog to be really overstimulated. And so those of us listening to the podcast that maybe have various forms of neurospicy ADHD or what have you, you can understand how that trigger stacking can occur and how you can become overwhelmed in yourself. The same thing can happen with the dog. So it's really getting that foundations to make sure that the human understands the dog. And also, if someone comes to me and they're already fried, it's getting them back to base zero.
Yeah, yeah. So there's just this whole weaving of all these threads, right? You've got daily support when it's needed, basically help in your pocket. You've got weekly calls, and there's education as well as emotional support, as well as training, as well as just that. reminder, like for many of your folks.
Accountability.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's accountability, but also a reminder that they've actually made progress,
Mm,
especially if it's been a hard day. It's not the end of the world. Like, look at how far you've come already, right? So you're giving a lot more support in that area too. Are you okay if I just change tactics a little bit here? I want to go down a different path. So,
it's your show.
Kirsten, yeah, well, that's okay, but we're having a conversation, right? So, Kirsten is one of my clients. And for many of you who listen to this, you know that I am big on choosing a niche.
Mm.
And normally, when I suggest you choose a niche, I do not suggest that you choose a really unique niche. She is the exception. And I think that this is an interesting conversation because at times it's important for you to choose a niche that is not so unique and so untested that you have no idea if it's going to work. If this is the first time that you're building a coaching practice and you're deciding what niche, and you go into something that's very unique that nobody has ever done before, it makes it doubly hard for you to build your business. She is the exception because she has years as a dog trainer. So she understands the dog world and that relationship with clients as well. She's worked with many, many clients. The difference here is the new niche is an evolved version of the dog training niche. So let's talk about this a little bit. Like, what's it like to have a very unique niche? What's been the experience for you?
It has been really, really interesting because I am one of those dog trainers that is in the camp of I like being friends with other dog professionals. Sometimes this industry in particular, it can be kind of cutthroat. People like to be in different camps, and so they view each other as competition. I'm very much so like I want to meet as many people as possible and see what can we learn from each other. And so it's been funny because not only have I been explaining what it is I've been doing to clients, but also going to, dog trainers that have been in this industry for decades being like, yeah, here's my spin on it that I'm doing, which is completely different to what so many of the other people that I've encountered. Not to say that they're doing anything um less or anything like that. It's just different. It serves a
Exactly.
different client base. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um,
So yeah, continue. There's a piece here that I want to ask about later.
it has been actually really, for lack of a better word, calming. I think I'm an individual who I always gave 110% in school and work. And I had always done the pathway of what I thought was the smart thing to do. I got my degree at the business school, went to university, did all of that. And I was successful. But the whole time I was going through my education back before I started my career, I had this nagging but for what? Like, who is it that I meant to serve? Which is a really maybe a bit of a different perspective than a lot of my business peers because I went into business school knowing that I wanted to work for myself and knowing that I wanted to make a difference in the world, but not knowing the direction. And then I got into dogs thanks to my rescue dog. And then I was still left with this. But how can I serve people the best that I possibly can? And so I worked with a lot of clients and we had a lot of successes. But, when you teach a 4 week or 6 week long course, I'm always at the end of it. I was always at the end of it like, but I have so much more left to give. And I know that your journey is so much longer than this. And so part of what really drove me this direction was to really make sure that I knew whatever clients came to me that a significant progress was made and that I could feel good knowing that I set them on a different trajectory and that it had made a significant difference in their life.
Yeah, that word impact, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the word that really shows up. Did you have to give yourself permission to go down this road less traveled? Was that something you struggled with or?
It was very difficult because part of what was challenging here is I had left safer jobs and safer pastures. As I know, having listened to your podcast, that you came from that world, when you're, in a position where you're at a decent position in a company and making a decent salary and in a position of authority, and to go from that to I'm going to do this all on my own and do this completely new thing, it is very, very scary. But I gave myself permission, and also I have to thank my very kind and supportive fiance because he turned to me one day and was like, for as long as we've been together, and that's been over 4 years now, I had been talking about wanting to build this business in a different iteration back then. And he's like, you just need to do it because we just need to see if you can do it. And so that's kind of the energy I'm bringing into this.
Yeah, I really like that. The the other piece is like this definition of safe, right? I mean, so often we would think, oh, I had a really good career. I had, the title, the salary, whatever, like you said. And we think that that's safe, but it is so
It's
not
not.
safe. It
I
is
don't
such
think
a
so.
lie, right?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
But when you have other people around you that are not doing the entrepreneurship thing, and also for context, my fiance is an accountant. And so I won't go too far into his backstory. But financial prudency, prudency, is that a word?
Yeah,
Prudence?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And thinking things through, that is his shtick. That is why he is paid what he is paid to do. And what I'm doing is very much so the opposite of that.
But it's true. So this thing about what is safe, right? Just we've been indoctrinated to the fact that a regular paycheck with benefits and longevity with a company is going to make us safe. And it's time for us to change that story to go, wait a minute, no matter what company it is, large or small, there comes a time where they make staffing changes, and
Mhm.
your role might be one of those staffing changes, and it can happen in an instant. Like we've all heard of people who walk into their workplace in the morning and they are called in for a meeting and they are gone within 30 minutes. They've had their meeting, they've had to clear out their desk of their personal stuff, and off they go. That doesn't give you safety. When you've got your own business, you get to decide what you're going to do. Do I want to make more? Do I want to make more money? Do I want to make a bigger impact? And then it's all on you to decide. You're the one that gets to choose. There's the safety that we really need, right? So I like this idea about this blend, the blend of the training and the coaching. Can you tell people a story, an example of clients that you've worked with and the transformation that they've had?
Sure, yeah. So, I'm just gonna peruse through which one would be the best one for this podcast. Uh, t- 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 one of my clients was a very interesting example because she was one of those clients that was, for all intents and purposes, living on her own. So single parent, I'm using the AW parent household, with her dog. He was a little rescue, uh, pity mix, quickly growing, but still on like the small side for a pity. And this poor guy, just when you look at the luck of the draw, he was found on the streets of Vancouver when he was, at an age that he shouldn't have been separated from his mom, whoever that happened to be, so not set up for a great start in life. And that really impacted, even though she did so many things right, it really impacted him. So part of that was, if you were someone known to him, he loves you, right? And it doesn't even necessarily need to be like, oh, just his mom and dad. Like, oh, if he had met you once before, you're fine, you're good. But new people, always scary.
Mm.
Um, Living in an apartment, sound sensitivities, this whole jazz. And when we first started working together, I had asked her, like, what needs to happen for you guys to stay together, and what is kind of the make or break point. And she had said, okay, if I know that things can get better, like if we can point to these goals and say, oh yeah, we've reached them or we're on the way to reaching them, then that's enough for me. And so our first coaching session, back onto the coaching side of things, was creating KPIs, so key progress indicators. And so people might be like, why are we talking about business stuff when we're doing coaching and dog training? But so this is what I mean. A lot of it's very interdisciplinary. So we sat down, I created a behavior modification plan, and we looked at key progress indicators. And so at first we started working together. It was just going to be, it's before I did my current iteration of my program, it was just going to be, a month. And it's like, okay, at the end of the month, we're going to see, did we make progress? Did we meet those KPIs? And we had. And um, that guy, this pup still has a ways to go, but we went from, her not being able to walk him around the neighborhood without having tons of reactions to being able to walk to his daycare and back. And so that was something like she had never thought she was going to be able to do. Within 2 weeks, she was able to do it. So it's just really looking at I think the key thing that I always do with clients is really identify with them, like, what is that thing that you want? Because, say, what Candy wants for her dog is not the same thing than what my client over here wants for their dog. They have very different goals, and the
Mhm.
why is important. Why does she want to be able to walk her dog to daycare and back? Because the fact that she couldn't was causing her so much stress. The fact that she couldn't walk her dog, the fact that at that point he was going to daycare like 5 days a week, and she always had to like drive him, go, then figure out how she was going to fit the walk in, different things like that. So when we talk about lifestyle coaching and lifestyle management, it's figuring that out. Our next step was how much money a month was being spent on all this dog care. Okay, how do we half that? Well, how do we half that with some training components so he was able to work on the separation anxiety so he could stay home alone for 4 hours instead of having to go to daycare every day, right? So it's those little incremental things. And on the whole of it, maybe this doesn't seem like big things, but that saves a few $100s a month. It's peace of mind because the pup's not freaking out. So yeah, that's just one example of one of the clients that I was really proud of how much progress she and that pup had made.
That's great. And, like if the dog doesn't have to go to daycare because they can be on their own for even a couple of hours, that means that she can also go out occasionally and do other things instead of,
That was,
I'm
yeah,
sorry, I can't go out for dinner. No, I can't go to a movie. No, I can't go grocery shopping because I can't leave my dog, right?
that was the big thing. And she was really struggling with isolation of like couldn't go to the gym because she couldn't leave her dog home alone. And
Mm,
not to say that the dog doesn't go to daycare, because he still does. It's just that he doesn't have to 5 days a week because he is now capable of staying home alone for a few hours at a time. So yeah, she can go grocery shopping, she can go meet friends, she can go to the gym. And so that really helped with lifting her mood. And back to the earlier question of what's more important, the dog or the human. If it becomes down to one or the other, you address the human first because the dog can't care for the human, but the human can
mhm.
care for the dog.
Agreed. And what I hear in that story is the benefit. So first off, the emotional benefit, feeling more capable, understanding what's going on, having a better relationship with the dog, knowing that you're taking better care of the dog and that you can actually do more, I would call them normal things, take your dog for a walk to daycare. But then you've also got that peace of mind that's added in there. And then the easy calculation is how much money do you save not taking your dog to daycare because you have to take them to daycare, even to the little bit if you had to drive the dog to daycare and it was a significant difference, 5 drops of gas or 1 liter of gas every couple of weeks, like that adds up, right? So there really is the cost savings as well as the emotional benefit of doing it. And, and at the heart of it, less resentment, right? Like less resentment from the mom to the dog. And then the dog is going to pick up on that too. And it's a happier life for both of them. That's pretty cool. Yeah.
I had heard something when I was younger, and please stop me if you've heard this quote and know who I should be attributing it to. But basically, this idea of like the job you have, the partner that you have, the kids you have, those are the things that are going to cause you stress in life. Basically, meaning is like we pick our stressors, we pick the things that are going to bring us joy, and those will also be the sources of conflict. So, really, it's how do we make the best choices possible to minimize the conflict, and how can we help minimize that conflict, because it's not possible for life to be devoid of conflict. That's just not realistic, but it's being intentional about what we're choosing and how we're choosing to, yeah, continue to address it, manage those relationships.
Well, in this, when you make a choice, you feel like you're in control.
Mm,
You're not reacting, you're proactive. And
yeah.
just that alone helps with how you feel. So, last question before we
Mhm.
wrap up is what would you say or what advice would you give to another coach who's worried that their niche is too weird or too specific? Like, what kind of advice could you give them?
Why are you picking that niche? That sounded very blunt, but the why really impact the answer to that question, right? If the answer is because I know, because I was that person, or you know somebody who could really use that, then you know that it's not too niche because you know that there are people that need it. There could also be some component of a calling, right? Why you're doing this. And you had hit the nail on the head earlier of like, I really care about impact, not so much in a like, I need to have my name on a building or anything, but just more this idea of that I was able to help other people improve their lives. That to me is something very important and what I had always strove for when figuring out what it was I was going to do with my life. And so, similar to a new coach, why do you want a particular niche? And I think that that's important because if the answer just on the surface level is like, oh, that's like the highest ticket, it's like what I can charge them the most for, there's nothing wrong with making money. It's just more that when times are tough, that's a hard thing to hold on to. Your why is what's going to stabilize you and make you motivated to keep going, even when things are difficult in your business. So you should, if you're going to go through the process of both the highs and the lows, and there are lows of running your own business and your own practice, you want to make sure that it's worth it. And what makes it worth it has to be something intrinsic inside you. There needs to be an alignment there.
And then remind yourself why you're doing it when things are tough and you're just having just in one of the valleys, like, oh, do I have to do that thing? Either it's hard or it's boring, or it's just not working exactly the way you thought it was going to in 5 minutes. So when you have that why, it really helps you lean in there. I love
Mhm.
it. Thank you. All right. So I appreciate the conversation. And I would love for you to share how can people find out more about you? How can they get into your world? And how can they come and get your help with dogs?
Absolutely. Well, thank you. I'm just going to take a second to
No,
really good.
no, that is not true. I had a question that was not written down that I want to ask you.
Please go for it.
Yeah. So, one of the things that is different is that you are previously you were a dog trainer, and a lot of that is face to face in the same at the same location. But now your business is an online business.
Mhm.
What's it like to do that transition from location specific to online? And how do you think that impacts the relationship that you can have and the impact that you have with your clients?
This is a really fun question and really interesting to me because some people when I approach them, they say like, why would you do dog training online? But in part, I was very inspired by the aforementioned Sailor Jerry because this is what, not the coaching part of it, but the daily training, that she was the pioneer in that space. And so I knew it could be done. And as I started to work with clients in this way, it became very obvious that I actually formed deeper connections with the clients working online and was really able to help them a lot more because I was talking to them every day. It's because we were making progress. We were chatting back and forth online. I was answering questions. I was seeing videos of them training their dogs, right? And so this is also the really fun thing and going a little bit on the tangent with coaching. You really want to make sure you like whoever your coach is. And you want to make sure that you like your clients. Going
Yeah.
back to intentionality. No, but seriously, because I go to bed thinking about my clients. My clients are in my phone. We talk every day. I'm
Yeah.
in their life. They're in my life because we're working together every day. So when you talk about doing something in person versus online, the shift to online allowed for more flexibility where I was actually able to help people way more than I could in person, both due to time constraints and financial constraints. You know, the ability to go provide the level of support I'm providing from an online space doing it in person would take so much more time and come with an astronomical price tag.
You'd almost have to be a live-in, you know.
No, no,
Let me come and live in your home for 3 months and I will help you, right?
yeah. No, but seriously, and also it's more effective when we talk about big feeling dogs. Uh, think about an experiment. I am an unknown variable to your dog. So if you have a dog that's reactive towards people, immediately as you're paying me for these sessions of me coming to your home or in public and helping you with this dog, the first however many, part of that is the dog just being able to get to know me so they're not freaking out at me before we can even get to addressing other things. Versus when I'm here to help you, the client, the dog mom in this equation, I can help you help your dog rather than needing to get over that barrier of the dog needing to be okay with the trainer.
And I think that it's faster too, because it's not just, it sort of forces the dog owner to be observant. What exactly is the dog doing? Like Kirsten helps me with my dog. And so it's, what exactly is the dog doing? So now I have to kind of watch. Oh, she's giving me the side eye, or her ears are going back. And so that means that I have to learn the dog language
Mhm.
faster than I might have in the past. I might have thought, oh, I'll figure that out. But now I really have to learn it so that I know that I'm actually making use and helping the dog really integrate nicely. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I was just going to add to that comment. I find also that helps dog moms feel a lot more confident because what will happen is you'll come to a class in person, and there's this difference again in the dog training world of helping clients train their dogs or training the dogs for the clients with board and trains or things like this. But what will happen is a dog will say, come to a group class, and I'll use your dog as a demo dog, and your dog does the thing, and then the dog goes back to you and doesn't do the thing. That's not helping that translate well into real life.
Yeah.
Does it mean that that can't happen? The progress is slower to help you pick up those things versus if we don't have those other variables and I'm just teaching you how to teach your dog, the progress is a lot faster.
Yeah, that's super helpful. So isn't that interesting? We always think that the in-person is going to be better, and there's so many aspects that because it's online, it's even more effective, it's faster, and because of the high touch, you get way more value out of it as well. I like that. Cool. Wow, we've covered all kinds of things. I really appreciate you coming on and discussing this with me. Can you tell folks how they can find out more about you and how you work with dogs, and also come into your world and find out that way too?
Yeah, absolutely. So my dog training practice or business is called the Canine Detective. You can find me at the Canine Detective on Instagram. If you type that into the internet, my website will pop up. And I would love to invite all the listeners to something called the Dog Mom Office Hours. So I will be offering those twice weekly. So even if you're not quite sure if you're ready for training or you just have some questions and would like kind of an expert opinion on them, it's totally free. It's free weekly group calls, question and answers, and I also have some talk topics. So you'll get to come and learn a little bit from me, and then I open the floor to answer some questions. And those will be weekly on Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Pacific time, and then Thursdays at 6 p.m. Pacific time. But again, if you go to my website, you can sign up there and get all that information.
Awesome. That's great. I love that you're doing that. Okay. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for listening. I hope that you learned as much from Kirsten as I did. Just a second here. Okay, everyone, thanks so much for joining us this week. I hope you learned a lot from this conversation. We dug into dogs, we dug into dog mums, dogs with big feelings, but also the coaching side and considering your niche and how to choose your niche. Really appreciate you joining us. I believe in you. I know that you can do this, and I'll be back to talk to you again next week.